This video is brought to you by Midway USA. Support the channel by choosing Midway for your shooting and outdoor supplies. Welcome back to 9-Hole Reviews. Today we'll look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of the PSA AK74, but most importantly, its redeeming nature to US AK manufacturing, and in the process, likely piss off everybody. The AK purists will hate that this US-made AK, by a company that's best known for their budget-friendly ARs, puts up better groupings and is more gas-tuned than their premium TDP-correct imports, for about half the price. The just as good crowd will hate that this first pass at US AK production by Palmetto State Armory, well, had some fairly significant issues that required multiple trips back to the manufacturer to correct. And the just get an AR boys will hate that we strongly encourage these types of manufacturing endeavors and see decisions by PSA to spin up US AK production as a major step in the right direction to ensure access to these types of rifles in the future. Did we miss anyone? Straight away, we know we're a little late to this party. Grand Thumb has posted an extensive series of videos running through his PS AK74, Military Arms channel has done their video, Michiko made several demonstrations of issues he encountered, and so on. But we hope that this session provides further detail, feedback, and conversation around this, call it, controversial rifle. Now, let's get on with it. This is the Palmetto State AK74, a US manufactured Kalashnikov which PSA announced in late 2019 and began delivering into 2020, if memory serves us right. The rifle, as with its namesake, is chambered in 545x39, a once dirt cheap round which has spiked in cost over the last few years thanks to a number of factors around the globe, but is still our preferred round to shoot through the Kalashnikov, generally speaking. Now, if you're the AK purist looking for history on the AKS-74 or the modernization of that rifle, I'm going to encourage you to check out two of our comprehensive classic reviews we've already done on the channel, covering those subjects at length. For our purposes here, we may draw on details covered in those sessions. Now, if you couldn't tell straight away, this is obviously my rifle. So the first thing I did when I got it was strip it down and rebuild it with my preferred aftermarket kit. This version of the rifle, with the fixed rear trunnion, shipped originally with standard polymer handguard, both upper and lower, and stock, but we dumped those. So let's have a look. Here at the muzzle, you'll see the rifle sports a traditional 74 break with the M24x1.5 right-handed threads found on imports. As we move back, the barrel thickness also aligns with our imported samples. With that said, we did see the PSA as having a few thou less in diameter, so we'd be interested in seeing what you all have found. If you have multiple variants, please let us know in the comments below. Now, I've replaced the handguard and the gas tube with the SLR Rifleworks M-Lock handguard, and mounted up a Surefire Mini on an Arasaka mount with our Slate Black Industries grips and VFG. As we continue to run rearward, we hit the rear sight block. This is one of the first areas where we've noticed that the PSA differs from an imported AK. Where the rear sight nubs engage with the rear sight block, the PSA uses a 5.25mm width ear versus the imported 4mm ear. You might be saying, like, that's irrelevant, but this did prohibit us from mounting up a Texas Weapon Systems dogleg top cover. The pin used to affix that device to the block was too short to cross through the full PSA block with the extra width, something to keep in mind. So instead, we opted to go with the Atero Arms pick rail mount and strapped on an EOTech EXPS2. As we continue rearward, you'll see we've used the US Palm rear grip and ALG AK trigger. This rifle ships with the enhanced safety to allow you to activate it with your trigger finger. And now we get to see how many people made it this far in the video. This stock setup is probably one of the most requested details we get asked about whenever we post photos of this rifle or have it out on the range. So if you've already commented asking what the stock was, you better go back and edit that right now. This is the KPYK CRC stock. It's a Ukrainian export, which presents a pretty slick option for converting a fixed rear trunnion AK into a folder. It's rock solid and sports an adjustable comb height and length of pull. It also locks in the folded position by use of an optional magnet. If you can find one nowadays, it's certainly a cool pickup, although these are quite expensive. That's the overall exterior configuration. Now, let's look under the hood. You'll see the PSA rifle uses the same thin-size bolt stem as matched in the Bulgarian 104FR. I already teased the idea that this rifle was an accurate shooter, at least as AKs go. So, let's show you. You'll recall about a year ago we dropped the video where we shot accuracy groupings of 10 popular AK or AK variant rifles out there. That video link is in the description. Of the stamped receiver imported AKs we tested, the best grouping we got was from the AK9er with a 3.07-inch 9-shot group and a 2.31-inch 90% grouping. The winner of the overall test was the Galil Ace with a 2.43-inch 9-shot group and a 2.07-inch 90% grouping. And so where would the PS AK74 fit into these rankings? Check this out. A 2.55-inch 9-shot group at 100 yards, with the 90% grouping shrinking to 1.97 inches, setting it effectively tied for first place in our overall AK accuracy rankings. And before anyone complains about the sighting choice being an unfair advantage, Henry didn't have the magnification maxed out. It was dialed back to align with what we had done in our previous accuracy tests. So the next questions are certainly going to be about the barrel. This is a 16-inch, 1 by 6.5-inch twist, 4150 CMV barrel. Nothing necessarily shocking to write home about, but clearly it works. We saw this outshoot 7 other AK variants, all extremely popular imported rifles. And so what about the other half of the equation? What can we do from a perspective of speed here? Oh, yeah, we weren't kidding when we said the gassing was spot on this rifle. This feels like a gas check system, an absolute pop gun in terms of felt recoil. With the ALG AK trigger, I'm effectively shooting as fast as I can press the trigger, and the groupings are almost completely A-zone.
Gas checked 74. No, I mean, not really, but that's what it feels like. That's a pretty darn good group for basically doing a hammer, shooting as fast as I can pull the trigger. We'll take that. 1, 2, maybe 3 Charlies, but everything just absolutely center mass. Most AKs, when you shoot them, most imports, they are gassed very, very harshly. A lot of gas coming back. And even when you're shooting a 5.45, what that ends up doing is it really jams that carrier back and it hits the rear of the receiver into the rear trunnion. That's how it's designed. That's how it's meant to be shot. It's part of how the AK has its legendary reliability, because simply it's overgassed, so it's going to chew through whatever's going on. The PSA AK, at least this particular variant, this singular one that we are shooting, is gassed really nice. It allows you, when you're jamming on the trigger, to put up groups like this, especially when you have a handguard setup such as this one. We've got the SVG on there, the SLR Rifleworks handguards, and the slate grips, which just let me dig the rifle into my shoulder and hold it just dead firm. So there you have it. Alpha Zone, baby.
This is reminiscent of the Alpha Trainer, the Niner, and other gas-checked AKs that we've brought on the show. Absolute beast mode in terms of being able to balance speed and accuracy, but also not too soft either. It isn't cycling slow, it doesn't feel sluggish in the action. As you can see from these clips, the carrier isn't slamming into the rear of the receiver, it's just gently kissing and moving back forward. Obviously, this isn't always considered universally good. Extra gas commonly found on imports can be important to improving reliability as the rifle gets exposed to more and more carbon or debris. But we've not had anything like that cause a stoppage to this point, so we'll take the performance advantage here. So this rifle is basically a sure thing then. Based on those details, you're probably already opening up Gunbroker and running your search. Well, hang on a second, because there's a second half to this story.
Hello there. So you've just caught me admiring my Gucci collection. And this is just a friendly reminder for you that even if you are a snob of sorts, you can still enjoy rifles like the PSA AK74. Now, if you've enjoyed the show thus far, I welcome you to consider joining us on Utreon. Or, of course, joining the newsletter gang. Details are down below in the description. Now, back to the show.
The unit you're looking at here is part of the initial or initial-ish production. So some of the issues we ran into with this rifle may now be a distant memory from what's hitting the market today. So consider that. Also consider you're only looking at a sample of one here, but these findings certainly echo many of the same findings reported by other users over the past few years. So here we go. The first issue we ran into was that our piston was bent. Seemingly on purpose, more on that in a minute, but in order to fit into the gas block, this bend caused there to be some pretty obvious binding inside of the gas tube. So when we swap the gas tube from the stock out to an Ultimat gas tube, the piston would actually completely seize, touching the top of the tube inside and would not go into battery. Now, the rifle would function with the stock gas tube, but certainly not as intended in our opinion. There was significant sluggishness and binding as the bolt tried to go home, effectively right where it made contact with the gas block. Now, this was an issue that had a relatively viral thread from another user, or set of users, on AR15.com back in early 2020. And it became clear that this was not an isolated issue, and it appeared that PSA was actually purposefully bending the pistons. This has never been something that we've seen on the 20 plus other AKs we've had from various makes, models, and importers. Now, we sent this rifle back to PSA with this feedback, and the rifle came back with the issue resolved. Although it still feels like there may be just a touch of binding at the gas block. All in all, we've not seen it to be an issue to this point. Now, unfortunately, this wasn't the only issue we ran into. After receiving the rifle back from the piston correction, we began running our testing process, and we started to experience instances where pieces of primer would either be blown into or sucked into the firing pin channel. This would happen at random intervals. Sometimes we would shoot 100 plus rounds with no issues. In other instances, after cleaning the debris, we would have a primer lock up the firing pin within a few rounds. This happened across multiple ammunition types over multiple range sessions. Each time the issue occurred, it required the rifle to be completely stripped and the bolt disassembled before the rifle was able to fire again. Clearly a major issue. The rifle was sent back to PSA a second time. We sent everything back through standard PSA returns, so nothing would be white gloved or anything of the sort. Since this correction, we've seen no further issues over an additional 1,000 plus rounds or so. What is the result here? Well, there were certainly issues with bolts on multiple PSA AK74s. We saw similar issues to what we experienced across numerous other rifles that were in the hands of YouTubers, bloggers, and the like. PSA has publicly acknowledged that they did have a set of bolts with firing pin channels cut too large. They've corrected that on future productions, reportedly as of October 2021. Ultimately, we can understand how this could happen when tooling up for first-time productions of a brand new type of rifle than what your manufacturing facilities have produced before. But in totality, creating a US source for Kalashnikovs, especially as imports have become harder and harder to get, either thanks to sanctions or politics or countries having issues with local demand, frankly, this is a step in the right direction to ensure the availability of AKs to the US market. So in summary, the rifle is one of the most accurate AK samples we've had come through the show. And yes, we will absolutely run it on the practical accuracy course. It is gassed extremely soft, which makes shooting it extremely pleasant. It can be configured with most aftermarket accessories. While you'd love for things to fit together perfectly, AKs aren't really like ARs in this regard. Rob Ski has a good video on this subject on the AKOU channel if you're interested in learning more, but suffice to say, sometimes installs on AKs require hammers, not Allen keys. The PSA AK is no different. Not everything will work as a drop-in bolt-on attachment. In addition to this, obvious to us that the original runs on the PSA 74s had issues. The company was clearly spinning up new manufacturing lines and not everything went perfectly. If you look at getting one of these, especially on the secondhand market, know that you may need to send it in for the most updated corrections to be made. Perhaps consider looking at getting it direct from the manufacturer from the newest lots if that's the case. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our take on the PSA AK74. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and until next time, we'll see you on the range.
716, this is Steel 96, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green, how copy, over?
Steel 96, this is 716, roger, over. 16, Steel 91, 1 pack, green, green, over. This is 716, roger, over. 16, Steel 92, 1 Victor, 2 packs, Redcon 1, over.